What's up, guys? I'm Odo Blessing, and welcome to the third part of how to create Chrome extension. If this is the first video you're watching from the series, I'd advise you check the first two videos that we've done so that you can catch up. The first video was about how to set up Chrome extension. The second one, we added a little functionality, and in this third video, we'll be cleaning up on the functionality. The truth is that if you just want to know how to set up Chrome extension, the first part is enough for you, and that's all. All we're just doing is adding functionality over the extension, and what we are building is a timer. So in this session today, we'll be dividing it into three parts. We're dividing the session into three parts. The first part, what we'll just do is to run the countdown as soon as Chrome starts working. That is if the extension is active. So if the extension is active, Chrome should start running the countdown immediately. If the extension is not active, Chrome will wait until it is activated. Then also would listen for when the user activates the extension. So immediately the user activates the extension, we start working. Or let me just say the background script starts working. That's all. And there are two ways to do the countdown. We could allow the content script to do the countdown. I hope you know what content script is all about. If you don't know what content script is, go back to the second video. The link is there so that you can watch and know what content script is. So we could leave the content script to do the countdown, and whenever the timer hits 0, the content script shows the pop-up to the tab, and there we do not really need to worry about getting the ID of the tab, since the content script will be attached to a specific tab. But the problem with this approach is that what if the user has 100 tabs opened? That means there will be 100 content scripts running countdown, which will be memory intensive. So another approach I looked at is to allow the background.js run the countdown. Then when the timer hits 0, the background.js disperses the information to the content script that, okay, the timer has hit 0, you can start showing the pop-up. I think that is better, since only one script will be running the countdown and the message will be dispersed. So, and that's the approach we are going to use. So you can try using the content script to do the countdown and compare the results. Anyways, we'll be following the second option. Okay, so let's get right onto it. Now, before we start, there is something that I'm supposed to do in the last video, and it is handling of error. There was an error that we had at the end of the video, and I said that we should use this to sort out the error. But later on, I found out that the error still persisted, and what I later did was to do this. So this means that there is an exception that is thrown when this does not go through, or when there's an error when you're sending message. So the exception is this chrome.runtime.last error. So whenever this error, whenever there's error, it throws it. So you need to check for that error so that it can suppress the error. So that is how you can do that. So this works also. That means if the tab has not completely loaded, you should just forget about the next statement. Okay, so let us get started. Okay, the first thing I would want us to do is to have some variables defined. So I would put those variables into a constant data. The good thing about JavaScript is that although a variable that you declared using const cannot be changed, but if it is an object, the keys inside can be changed, and that is what we want to do. The data cannot be changed, but the keys that we have inside can be changed. So set int, so this will be the ID of our interval. The set interval will be using to run the timer. Then let us also keep our future timer so that we will not need to be querying Chrome extension, the Chrome storage, every time we need to know the future time. Let us also set that to null. We'll be using these values later on. Then we want to also have a value to, oh sorry, this should be colon. What am I doing? This should be colon. So we want to also have a value that would background.js will check before running the countdown. So when this value show up is true, there is no need to run the countdown, because the countdown is to know if the countdown is to get to the end of the, because the countdown is to get to 0, and if it's 0, show pop becomes true. So there is no need to run the countdown again if show pop is true already. So that is just to optimize the process. Okay, so now that we've declared this, let us go ahead. So another thing I would like us to do is to have a function that handles the checking of the data. That is to know the future time and also to know the status of the extension. Is it true? Is it activated? Is it deactivated? So this function would cater for that. So would be checking from the storage .sync.get. Now I told you if you are looking for more than one value, we would have an array. Then that will be set into an object and passed into an anonymous function. Okay, timer and status. I hope you understand what we are trying to do here. So we are trying to get the state of the extension by knowing what the timer is and what the status is. So because I do not want to check every time, I don't want us to check every time, this is what we're going to do. We're going to set our future timer. We're going to set it here. Good. And we are going to say if the status, that is if the extension is not active, would return. In fact, this should be the first thing we check for. Then the next thing we are going to do is to now run the countdown. That means if it can get to this line, that means all the conditions have been met to run the countdown. Then we'll have a function, maybe a countdown function. So let's just put this. We have a countdown function. So let's create the countdown function now. So this countdown function is what will run in the background and check if the future time has elapsed. All right. So we'll be using set interval for our countdown. It takes 2 arguments. The first argument is the statement you want to run, while the second argument is the time. So you can use 1 second. I told you that JavaScript uses milliseconds to denote time. So 1000 means 1 second. 1 second. 1000 milliseconds means 1 second. So that's why we use 1000 here. So that means every 1 second it will be checking, it will be doing the loop. And I want to set this into I want to set the ID of the interval. I would like to set the ID of the interval to our set int that we've created in the beginning. This is it. So now this ID is what will be clear if we are done. When we are done with our countdown. So we have to clear it. If we do not clear it, the set interval will continue to run till infinity. But now when we clear it, it will stop running. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is to get our remaining time inside the interval. So when the loop starts, we first get the remaining time. Remaining. Okay, let me declare this outside. Okay, so now we have access to that. Remaining equal to data.futureTimer minus. Do you remember the calculation we did in our popup.js? Where is it again? Yeah. So this is the same calculation we want to do to get our remaining. In fact, all this we are going to repeat it here. So instead of retyping, just copy and paste. So this would now be, instead of timer, it will be data. dot future timer. Why? Because that is what we want to use in the background.js. We've already declared it here. Good. So now we know what the remaining time is. I know what this is. If the remaining is less than 0, less or equal to 0, let me put it like that. If it's less or equal to 0, set it to 0. So we don't want to have a negative time. So let's set it to 0. Then when the timer is now 0, this is exactly where we want. This is where we want to take the action. If the timer is not 0, it will overlook. Now this one is supposed to be inside this block here. So if the remaining time is less or equal to 0, we want to clear the timer. We want to stop the interval. We want to stop this the interval that has been looping. Then we want to set the show pop to true. So now we've gotten what we want. Then we're dispersing the message. You know, we said that when the timer is 0, as I explained in the beginning, that we are going to be dispersing the message to the content script on the tabs equal to true. So now it's equal to true. Then the next thing we are going to do is to query the tab, and that is what we did here. And I told you that all these ones will take it away, and that's what we're going to do. So this now we're going to take it away. We're going to put it here. Then we'll call this function, we'll call it here. I hope you understand what I'm doing. So now when the extension sends it, do you remember why we add this statement here? We said that add listener is to receive message, right? So the extension is the one sending this check status. And when it sends this check status, it is letting the background know that, okay, the user has taken action to activate or deactivate. So when the user takes the action, we want to start the countdown. But first, let us use check data instead, because we want to check if the action the user did was to deactivate the extension or to activate. So because we want to know that, we need to first check the data, and that's why we are calling check data first before check countdown. So when check data gets run, we check the timer, we check the status, and if the status is true, this statement will not run, because we wanted the statement to be status to be false before this one runs. But if the status is true, we'll go to the next line and we'll set our future timer to the timer, then we'll run our countdown. Then when countdown becomes 0, that's when we'll now start querying the tab. That's when we start querying the tab. I hope you understand. Good. So when we query the tab, we want to send a message to the tab. We'll send it to the tab ID. We'll send the message that it should check status. Normally, I would like to change this. Because we are not really checking status. What we want to do is but let us just leave it like that, just for this tutorial sake. Like I told you, the name does not really matter. It's just to make sure that when you are listening for the message, you have the same name there. But it's just the name is to explain what it is doing. So check status is not really explaining as well. What explains it better here is take action. That is, or show pop or something. Okay, another thing that I would like to, I've seen here, we are moving this code from another function, and that function provided request.status. That function provided request.status. But now the request.status is not available to us here. So we need to pass that in. So status. So that means this will not be request.status again. So to just be status. In JavaScript, you can write your key like this. And when you want to access it, you can do the object.status, and you get status.